Hey everybody, welcome back. HSC Podcast 88. Big Box Steve on the mic. Got the big smooth. And no, Fresh West. He's MIA. But that's okay because we got plenty to talk about. This is Thanksgiving edition. Uh Great thing about football and Thanksgiving is not only do you get Thanksgiving, but there's games from Thursday to Sunday. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 straight days, of football, whether it's college or pros. Uh, so you got your great dinner, you got your leftovers you're eating all weekend, you're just watching games. Probably the best weekend of football and food. So
And we got a
can't wait
Black
for it.
Friday game this year.
Yeah, that's crazy. Typically, it's only college on Friday, but some
Yeah,
big
it
college
sucks
games
though
coming
because
up.
for us, most people that still work on that Friday, it's at noon
Right, right.
Pacific time. Come on,
Yeah. Uh, of all the days we get off as a holiday, somehow Black Friday's a holiday. So I don't get Veterans Day off. I don't get, you know, all these other holidays, regular holidays off, but Black Friday, that's apparently a holiday.
you need the day off to go shop.
Yeah, apparently. That's what happens when you're in the world of sales. Uh, so let's get into it. So you got some trivia. Let's hear it. What's the what's the
All
Thanksgiving
right.
trivia?
Thanksgiving trivia. There's been only two teams, let me find that one, that have won on Thanksgiving and have won the Super Bowl the same year.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna say Dallas.
Yep, they've done it three times.
Yeah. And then oh the Packers?
Nope, the good guess. I
No.
mean, been in a lot.
Yeah, they've played a lot of Thanksgiving Day games. So I thought maybe, but they haven't won a lot of Super Bowls. They've won a few. Man, I guess what a Thanksgiving Day. What a Super Bowl. AFC or NFC?
AFC.
AFC. Oh man. I'm gonna say the Steelers.
Nope.
No.
It's a tough one. It is, you're kind of close because, it is in the 70s.
Right. Yeah, I can't think of, what would be recent. So
Well, it was it was in the 70s, this
yeah.
Super Bowl win. So,
Yeah, see, this is where you need West because West knows all the Super Bowl winners in the 70s. But Steelers won most of them in the 70s.
yeah.
Like half of them.
The AFC won most of them in the 70s.
Yeah. Dolphins?
Yes.
Yeah, because
1973
right,
Dolphins.
right. That's a tough one. I wouldn't have. I was thinking NFC, and that's why I asked NFC, AFC because I've been way off guessing these NFC teams.
This one, there's so many of these are just, it's so hard to pick because I don't. Okay, this is an easy one. Who has won the most Thanksgiving Day games?
It's got to be either Dallas or Detroit.
It is one of those two.
I'm gonna go with Detroit.
Yes. And who has lost the most Thanksgiving Day games?
Probably the Bears.
Nope.
No. Packers. No. Maybe Dallas then.
Nope. I'll tell you this one because it'll take a while. It is Detroit.
Oh, so they won. Well, they played the most too, right?
Yeah. Let's see. What was I'll give you one here.
Yeah, that's a good trick question.
Let's that's too hard because there's so many teams and it's just random because there's only two teams that have played on Thanksgiving that have not won a game on Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that could be a
it's
million
Tampa Bay
teams.
and Cincinnati.
Yeah, yeah, you'd never get that one. You'd have to be really up on your NFL Thanksgiving trivia for that one.
Right. Two quarterbacks have passed for 6 touchdowns on Thanksgiving.
Hmm. That's a tough number, regardless.
Yeah.
Um,
Neither of them are on teams you associate as being the Thanksgiving Day.
the Thanksgiving Day teams. Okay,
Yeah. I mean, what? Well, we just consider Lions in Dallas, right?
right.
Always. Yeah.
Green Bay plays a lot of them.
Yeah.
Uh, that is post 2000.
One is in the 70s.
Oh, geez. Terry Bradshaw.
Nope.
uh, Raiders quarterback?
Nope.
No. Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one. How about Dante Culpepper?
No.
Hmm. Six
Uh,
touchdowns on Thanksgiving. Post 2000.
think of one of the big ones. Big quarter, like
Right, right. I was gonna say Tom Brady, but that's too obvious.
not Brady, but
Post 2000. It's not one of the big teams. One of the not big teams, but big core. Peyton Manning.
yes. He threw 6 against Detroit in a
Right.
41-9 win in 2004. The other was Bob Greasy.
Bob Greasy. Was
He
that in
had six
73?
against 77, actually.
Okay.
He had 6 against the St. Louis Cardinals in a 55 to
Awesome.
14 win.
That was tough. That was a good one, though. I mean, a little help got Peyton there. Yeah, I would
And I'll
never
just
got Bob Greasy.
this one I'll just give. Ernie Nevers had 6 touchdowns in 1929, and that's the most ever. Never would have got that, so I just want to give
No,
that one out. Okay, so here, um, the Lions, if we've established, have played the most games. What two teams have they played the most against? And these are the two teams that have played the most Thanksgiving matchups against the Lions, but they were the most anyway.
also the most. So like
Yeah.
Dallas. Yeah, so Dallas has got to be one.
No,
Uh,
no, it's not Dallas because Dallas doesn't really play Detroit. I'm telling Detroit is in both of these matchups.
oh, Green Bay.
Yep.
Yeah, and Minnesota.
No, come on,
Oh, the
Steve.
Bears. All right, well, it's only one of
Yes.
two. It's only one of the two.
Yep. The
Yeah.
Packers have played the Lions 21 times. They played the Bears 20 times.
Wow. That's a lot of Thanksgiving Day games for Detroit.
Yeah. Got to give them
Yeah.
something. They can't get to a Super Bowl. So,
Right, right. Yeah, it was it's been since the 60s that they started with an 8-2 record. So they haven't been 8-2 since the 60s. Oh man. But they're doing well, so we'll see how they finish out. Can't wait for some Thanksgiving Day football. But let's jump into college first because this is there's a lot happening in college football. And of course, last week 12 recap. big wins, obviously. Washington pulled out a real close game to stay in that playoff contention. Beats Oregon State by 2 points. That was a real good game. But the Florida State, I think, probably was the toughest game, right?
Well, yeah, they
You,
lost
you
their quarterback now.
yeah, so you beat obviously you easily beat a North Alabama team like you should, but how does losing their quarterback affect their even just their playoff voting, right? Does the playoff committee consider the fact that they don't have their quarterback when it gets time to select the top four?
I would think so. I think they're gonna. I mean, that's always been like that. It always determines. It's not what you have done; it's what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And with not having Travis, I'm like, I guess you got to see what they do against Florida, right? Florida's not a good team this year, so if they struggle
Right,
against Florida, that will really hurt them. Because if Washington, they've already got Washington leapfrogged them,
right. Which it has to be because, well, I guess Washington's played a tough team too. They won, but not by much.
right?
But I think the reason they leapfrogged them, in my opinion, was because they lost their quarterback.
Yeah,
And even if they go undefeated here, win this ACC, right? But you don't have your best player, not your best player, one of your best players, but your offensive driver. Then do you take a different team ahead of them, right? Does that affect maybe uh, Alabama beats Georgia, right, in the SEC championship? Then do you take a Georgia one loss Georgia over an undefeated FSU without their starting quarterback?
yeah, that is the tough question.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
doesn't
because
seem fair.
but no one wants a TCU Georgia match. You know what I mean? They don't want that
Yeah,
huge blowout,
yeah, and without Travis, they're obviously not the same team.
right? Although you never know, Ohio State with Cardell Jones, right? I mean, he was the third stringer.
Right. Yeah, and I guess, you have well, we'll see this week with Florida State how well their backup plays. And, it's not like he's not experienced, like he's an experienced backup. I've seen a lot, I've read a lot, and I hear a lot of people talking how, in a lot of people's opinions, and I think I'm of the same opinion just after listening to most of it. Just my thoughts would be that that hurts Florida State's chances.
But I mean, if they beat Florida handily and then beat Louisville, then you got to say, hey, we just beat
Right.
an SEC team and we beat the number 10 ranked team in the nation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So we still deserve to be here. But you also got to consider, if you get, well, so let's just talk about for a second. Let's say Georgia wins out, right? So let's say Georgia undefeated and Ohio State or Michigan, doesn't matter which one, undefeated. Those two teams are in. And then Washington undefeated and Florida State undefeated. Is there any reason to pick anybody else there?
no.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean,
they,
Oregon would have two losses, Alabama would have two losses. It'd only be Texas, but they have one
yeah.
loss.
Yeah. So Texas has that one loss. So if everybody in the top wins out, then you got to take Florida State.
Yeah. You can't punish them if they were still undefeated. I mean,
Yeah.
and there is no team close. I
There's not a
mean,
fifth undefeated team to
right.
really make an argument for. Yeah, because even a one loss, the only team I could see, I mean, maybe a one loss Ohio State or a one loss Georgia.
One loss Oregon because if they go and beat Washington, then it kind of nullifies their loss, don't you
Yeah.
think?
Well, that puts I mean in a tougher position because now you got a one loss Texas potentially, then a one
Right.
loss Oregon, and then a one loss Ohio State or Michigan. So now you got three. So let's say that scenario plays out, right? Let's say Ohio State or let's say Michigan wins. just because people think more of Ohio State. So let's say Michigan, Georgia, and Florida State, they're all undefeated. And then you got a one-loss Ohio State, a one-loss Oregon, and a one-loss Texas. Who do you give that fourth spot to?
I would think you'd have to give it to Oregon, and I'm not saying that because we're in Oregon, but their one loss was on the road to Washington, and which they could have won. They would have avenged that loss. The Ohio State Michigan loser, they just lost. We're not going to reward you. You just lost. Why should we give you the fourth spot? Then it would come down to Oregon and Texas. And then I would look at Pac-12 is a lot stronger than the Big 12.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at that point, I think that's a good case for Texas, Oregon over Texas. The loser of Ohio State, Michigan's tough though, because your one loss is to one of the top at that point now two teams.
Right.
You're losing a number one or number two overall, right? If it's Michigan losing to Ohio State right now, what they still have Ohio State number one in the playoff.
Two.
They have them at two now.
Yeah, Georgia's one.
Yeah, so either way, whether it's Michigan losing or Ohio State losing, you're losing to two or three.
Right.
I mean, that's tough to say that. Well, we only have one loss, and that's to the one of the best teams, the number one, number
Right.
two
But if you
team.
look at it, Ohio State would have played only 3 ranked teams all season, and they
Right.
lost one of them. Where Oregon would have beaten the team they lost to. Let's see how many ranked. Oh, let me pull this up here.
Yeah, it doesn't like Michigan played a lot of ranked teams either. So Michigan actually had a pretty easy schedule.
Yeah, so Oregon, well, I guess now it's bad because never mind. Oregon's is bad now because
Yeah, a lot of those teams have dropped
Utah
off.
and USC are not ranked anymore.
Right.
When they played them, they were ranked, but yeah, so it wouldn't be the same because Oregon would have played Oregon State and Washington twice.
And then the other factor would be conference champion.
Right.
So that gives another edge to Oregon in that sense. So I think best case scenario, yeah, Oregon wins out. Yeah, it kind of looks like they're in control of their own destiny. I don't see how you
Well,
don't take them at the fourth spot.
right. Well, I just also think the Big Ten, um, the one conference with Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State is stacked. They have to play who like Iowa or
Right.
Wisconsin or something who's not as good this year. Where in the Pac-12 or the Big 12, they did away with that, and it's the top 2 teams.
Right. You're playing the best
So
team.
if Big 10 would have done what these other schools would, then you would have had Michigan Ohio State rematch.
Right. Which could cause even more of a problem if they each win a game.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like the Washington Oregon uh,
Right.
conundrum, because even if Washington loses, they're going to still be like, "Hey, we beat them still.
Right.
It wasn't the last game."
Right. Because then they'd be like, well, on a neutral field, which all things are
Right.
equal, we're better than you.
Yeah.
It's at Michigan. So if Ohio State loses.
Yeah, that's going to be that.
But if Ohio State loses to Michigan, I'm not giving them the head coach isn't even on the field.
Right. And Michigan hasn't looked great the last couple of weeks. Yeah. I think you look at it, if it all plays out where Georgia wins out, Michigan or Florida State wins out, and then you take the winner of Michigan, Ohio State. I think Oregon really does have the best chance to win out and make that fourth spot.
Well, right
Uh,
now, there's 6. Alabama's ahead of them, right? But if they beat Washington and Alabama loses, there's no reason to keep them out. right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, Alabama, their only chance is to win the SEC, beat Georgia. That's a tough ask for Alabama, even though they're playing well. Alabama is playing solid, but that's going to be tough for them. Um, so there was some big games last week, though. The crazy game, and I said this before. Look what Arizona's doing to people. So then they beat Utah now like handily. And if you look back at Arizona, yeah, they lost that early game to like what Mississippi State or something. I don't remember who it was to. Um, yeah, Mississippi State. But then they pretty much had the Washington and the USC game won.
right.
So I mean, it's just crazy to see Arizona's season, and they were just so low. They weren't really ranked. But look at who they played, right? They played a number 7 Washington. They played a number 9 USC, a number 19 Washington State, a number 11 Oregon State, a number 19 UCLA, and a number 22 Utah. That's a crazy schedule. And then they still come out. They were 8-3 right now.
Right. Sadly, it's like Oregon, though. Only two of those teams are ranked now.
Right.
That
No, they drop off later, but at the time they're playing them, that's
mm-hmm.
just I don't know that anybody played that tough of a schedule this year, at current times. Like, when the game was ranked what they were. So I mean I thought that was interesting just because I don't think a lot of people thought that they would come out and just destroy Utah as well.
Right. Well, that's the thing is if Oregon State beats Oregon, Arizona's in the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they were talking about that in Arizona after the game. They were like, we still have a shot at the Pac-12 championship. At the other game, I think Georgia to Tennessee game. Even Tennessee's not great. I think Georgia kind of stepped back in and showed why they're the number one team. Because Tennessee's not bad, right? They're 7-4. They're ranked 18. But Georgia just dominated that game.
Yeah. I didn't have any faith in Tennessee. I mean, they lost to Florida. Come on. Florida
Yeah.
sucks this year.
I think it just answered some questions about Georgia. Georgia's been answering questions the last few weeks because the knock on them was, hey, they hadn't played a real tough schedule yet, and so the Missouri win and the Tennessee win. Obviously, it's going to come down to the SEC championship, but if they can get by Georgia Tech, of course,
Right.
the Mississippi win as well. So they went Missouri, Mississippi, Tennessee, and that's a tough 3 games. At the time 12, 9, and 18 as far as rankings.
Right.
So I think that answered a lot of questions about Georgia. Uh, are you in agreement, Georgia number one right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah.
it's like to be the man, you got to beat the man, and no one's beat
Right.
the man yet.
Yeah. And yeah, just you're back-to-back champions. You're still undefeated. You're back healthy again, which is important for them.
Yeah, you haven't lost in like 2.5 years. Come on. How
Great.
that's why
It's
it's like kind of
crazy.
stupid. It's like, why were they, we're gonna put Ohio State ahead because they look old.
Right.
No, dude, Georgia hasn't lost.
Right. I always had that problem. We talked about that when they brought out the college football rankings. We're like, everybody's like, oh, you guys, oh, Ohio State's number one. I'm like, they're not number one. Like, Georgia is number one, dude. You haven't lost in 2 years. You got back-to-back championships. I mean, it's crazy. So week 13, big games this week. There's two obviously huge games, right? Oregon State. which looks like to be the last technical civil war.
Well,
Maybe
we'll
they'll
see
play
because
again.
um,
Because do they not have one
Washington
scheduled?
State just signed a thing to do that, continue doing the Apple Cup. So I would like hope that they could figure something out.
Right. But didn't Oregon already release their schedule?
Oh, did they?
I think they
Jerks.
did. Yeah.
Karma's gonna hit them then.
Yeah. Oregon State comes out and wins this game. This is the kind of game I can see Oregon losing. They like to shoot themselves in the foot. And Oregon State's, they're not the greatest team, but they're not a bad team. They're a very, very solid team. They got good defense, good running game. They gave Washington all they could handle, you know.
Well, it's so funny. It went from Oregon State was favored against Washington to now they're 13 and a half point underdogs to Oregon.
Right, right, which I think is crazy. I think it's a good game. And now, if Oregon comes in and blows them out, does win by more than 13, that has a lot to say for Oregon.
Yeah.
So that's a huge game. And then obviously you have, the game of almost what you call the game of the year, Ohio State, Michigan,
Yeah.
to this point anyway. Um, and they always have to play at 9 a.m. You can't even let me sleep in a little bit.
Nope. There's
So
no such thing, Steve.
how does this game go? It's in Michigan, it's in Ann Arbor. No Harbaugh. Obviously, that matters. We already talked about this many times. Coaching matters. Michigan hasn't played great. However, Ohio State, I mean, I think they lack at the quarterback position. I know he's played okay, but dude, he's got great receivers.
Right.
Like it doesn't take a good quarterback to look good throwing the ball to those guys.
Right. And yeah, and has Mbuka just been hurt again all year? I mean,
Yeah, he's had a rough year. I don't even know if is he playing this game? I think he might be. But Michigan's defense is tough, right? So now you're talking about McCord. You've had a good season. It's not. I'm going to say it's decent. It's been a good season. But now you're going to face a better defense. There's going to be better coverage on your receivers. You're going to have to make better decisions with the ball. But Henderson looks good again, and obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. So where are you at on this game? What's your Michigan is actually favorite here?
yeah, well, it's a home game for him, so
Yeah.
oh, this is tough. Uh I'm gonna go with Ohio State.
On the road, Ohio State
I
minus,
got
yeah,
Marvin Harrison Jr. He's gonna have a big game. He wants to get back in that Heisman talk.
right. Yeah, it's tough, man. Um, yeah, I could go either way on this game as well. I think comes down to, can Michigan play their game, right? Do they get to run the ball? Do they get to control the clock? Do they get to keep Ohio State's offense off the field? They could do that, I think. And Michigan at home, a little bit of chip on their shoulder, man. But Michigan's won the last couple, right?
Yeah, and so
So is it Ohio State's turn to get back? Are they a
chip
little
on their shoulder,
salty,
right? Ryan Day
right?
talking trash to Lou Holtz.
A
No,
little salt in the wound. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bigger hit to their team than they realize not having Harbaugh there. So I think I'm gonna go Ohio State as well. So I'm being in agreement there, which sucks for Michigan because I think it's a different game with Harbaugh there. Alabama Auburn, not the game it used to be, just because Auburn's having a down year. Washington State can be a tough game, because Washington, they're not great on defense, and Washington State's real good on offense. That's not a gimme for Washington. I can tell you that right now. Like if I was going to pick an upset game, that would be on my radar.
And that's a big upset too, because it's 16.5 spread.
Yeah. Well, because in Washington,
Right.
Washington State has been down, right? The last few games for sure, where they started off real hot.
Yeah.
Florida State. Florida's always, athletic. You're never going to go in there, and it's not a lay down game, but they're not that great this year, obviously. But they're always going to have athletes, which I don't care. Any game when you've got athletes on the other side of the field, you got to be careful. Right? It's never a walk in the park anytime you're dealing with an SEC team or any team that's always going to have big, strong, fast guys.
Right.
So, and with a backup quarterback in, you don't know how well he's going to play. That's a little bit of a dangerous game there for Florida State. I don't think George is in any real danger. So all the other games that's kind of it for the top games. Well, Texas is a huge favorite there.
What about Nebraska, Iowa, Steve?
Oh yeah, man, that's game of the week right there. They could knock off Iowa. Actually, is playing well. Their defense is really good. Like they're giving up like an average of what was it like 9 points or something like that. Like something ridiculous. Yeah, Iowa's defense is solid.
Well, you know who the quarterback for your Nebraska Cornhuskers is?
I know, little Purdy.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't look bad. I mean, he's definitely got the feet that Brock does not have. He can run the ball. Like he can run the ball really well. Yeah, so I mean, those are most of the highlight games there. I think there are a couple games here that really are going to affect the playoff. There's a few games you got to watch out for. I don't think Florida State's a gimme. I don't think Washington's a gimme. And then obviously Oregon State, Ohio State, Michigan. Those are huge games.
Yeah.
So good week in college football. Right now, I think we're probably both in agreement. Georgia's number one, still the favorite.
Yeah. You want
So
to do your
let's
top four prediction right now, or do you want
top four.
to what you
Well,
think crystal ball, what you think's going to happen,
uh,
what's going to be the final four?
yeah, crystal ball right now. I got Georgia number one. I got Ohio State number two. I got Florida State number three, and I got Oregon number four. I think Oregon wins this game against Ohio State or Oregon State and gives them enough confidence to go win the Pac-12 championship. And given what the other teams are, if those other teams win out, right? If all three of those other teams win, you're just putting them against Texas and putting them against Ohio State or Michigan. I'm sorry, Michigan and Texas, and you got to give it to Oregon at that point.
Right.
So yeah, I think I don't see it playing out any differently. The big there was two big kickers for me. One was if Michigan beats Ohio State because everybody's so hot on Ohio State, they start talking about them getting in as a one-loss team. The other thing is if Alabama somehow beats Georgia in the SEC championship,
Oh, chaos.
then it really like that's where you're throwing a real wrench, right? If Alabama wins that game, like you've just really made, and then Travis getting hurt too, that also was huge. So there's a lot of things that happen and that could happen. My thought process though is that it doesn't. Like Georgia is answering a lot of questions in my mind with the last three games. Watching how they played against Mizzou, Ole Miss and Tennessee, they've looked really solid.
This is the last year before they go to 12, right? Or do they do
Yeah.
another?
No, I think they're going to 12 next year.
So this would be perfect. Here's what's going to happen.
All right, let's hear it. What's your prediction?
Georgia's going to lose to Alabama. Ohio State's going to beat Michigan and then lose to Iowa in the Big 12 championship.
Oh, Jesus. Which is not
Florida State,
impossible.
Florida State's going to lose to Louisville,
Yeah.
and then Oregon will beat Washington. Then you will have all the almost the top 8 will be one-loss teams,
Right, right. So everybody's one loss.
and then it will be chaos.
Yeah. It'd be just an absolute nightmare. But Ohio State will still have the win over Michigan. So they have the
But
foot
they
ahead
won't have,
on
they
Michigan.
wouldn't have won their conference.
Right, right. But still, like you got to start eliminating teams at that point, right? So you got to start moving teams ahead of other teams because technically Washington's still only a one loss team at that point too.
Right.
So you got another team in there,
Well,
and they
Louisville
and
will
they
be a one-loss team too,
right, right. Why and
and
they
they would have
and
beaten
you
Florida
got
State.
them winning the ACC or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's ACC championship too, right?
So could you see Oregon is the Pac-12 champion, Alabama because they're SEC
Alabama.
champion, Louisville because they're the ACC champion, and then you have Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, Washington, all playing for that
Well,
last spot.
I think you got to put Texas in at that point
Oh yeah, Texas. I'm sorry, I forgot Texas. So
because
yeah, you would have
because now Texas coming in saying, look, we beat Alabama, who beat Georgia.
right. So you'd have Alabama, Texas, Oregon, and Louisville.
Louisville. That'd be crazy. Because then can you put Louisville in though as a one loss ACC champion?
Well, they're
Because
the
what?
10th seed right now, and if they beat
Yeah,
Florida State,
right. And your
they're the
argument
ACC
is
champion.
the
So
argument would be that they won their conference,
yeah,
where like Georgia didn't, Michigan didn't, Ohio State didn't, Washington didn't.
right.
So you're going to
Florida
eliminate
State didn't. Yeah.
all those teams based on not winning their conference. So your prediction is Alabama, Oregon, Texas, and Louisville. You gonna put some money on that right now? You're gonna get a
Well,
great parlay odds on that.
wouldn't that be that's perfect though, because of chaos, and then everyone's going to be like, we needed that 12-team playoff this year.
Right, right. You kind of support the 12
And then
team
next
playoff.
year you'll have 4 teams that are undefeated and then a bunch of 2-loss teams.
Right, right. It won't matter that there's 12 teams going in. I mean, that's the chaos that can ensue, you know, what you're talking about with because those could all play out like that for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not like that's unheard of because look, Iowa's one of the best defenses in the country. You don't ever want to play a great defense. Louisville can easily beat a backup Florida State quarterback. You know, obviously Oregon can beat Washington. And Alabama's Alabama. Like you don't want to play Alabama in
Right.
an SEC championship. So that's yeah, definitely could play out that way. It's on that's like I said, if you got a parlay bet, that would be the bet, you know.
Yeah, I mean that way. Yeah, because right now we'll probably have maybe 2 undefeated, but we could have up to, you know, 6 one-loss teams too.
Right. Yeah, it definitely that's why these last couple weeks are exciting right now in college. And I guess maybe the does the 12 team playoff take away from that excitement? Because think about it, like if you have 12 teams this year, like who cares about all this?
Well, yeah, because I was looking and I'm like, Penn State is in. And I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
want Penn State in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and like none of these really matter. It's like because the jump between 5 and 6 and 4 and 5 and
Right.
8 and it doesn't even matter. So these games at the end of the year just aren't that exciting anymore.
Right.
So I
Because
don't know that
in
maybe
a
that's a
let's say if Alabama lost to Georgia, they still would be in the playoff.
right. They're still so the game just doesn't even matter, right? So maybe that 12 team is not the best answer.
Yeah.
We'll see how these last four play out. It should be fun. Let's jump over to NFL. You're 10-4. I was 9-5, so not a terrible week for us. There were a couple games that kind of threw us off. Obviously, um,
The Giants.
yeah, the Giants came out and played real well. I didn't really see that happening. I think I don't know if you had the Rams or the Seahawks, but I didn't really expect the Rams to beat the Seahawks.
I had the Rams winning.
Yeah, so you had that one. Maybe was that the extra game? Um,
Well, I must have had two because what you had the Texans, right?
right. Yeah, because you had the
I had the
Cardinals in that game.
Cards.
Yeah, so you had well, I picked the Bengals in Thursday. I think you picked the Ravens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the first one. I mean, the Bengals obviously. So we'll start there. Like, is it just over for the Bengals? They're 5-5. Burrow's
Yeah,
out for the
it's over.
season. Yeah, they're just done, right?
Now they're done. I mean, Jake Browning.
I mean, he's not Danny DeVito, but he's still Jake Browning.
Danny DeVito, did you see him? He put up numbers on the
Yeah,
Commanders. Um,
yeah. I'm not a fan of the
I- he
Commanders.
might have actually got his name back because of
Yeah, he
that.
did. Yeah, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 250 yards. But the Bengals still have weapons, right? You still got, your receivers, you still got your running back, your defense isn't terrible.
But you saw how they were when Burrow was hurt.
Right.
It wasn't effective. They weren't doing much at all. So I don't really expect Browning to do much, especially in the schedule they got. I mean, let's see, they've got Steelers this week who fired Matt Canada. We'll see if Cody Pickett actually becomes good.
Right. Good old Cody.
Then they got the Jags, then the Colts,
Oh,
and
they get
then the
the
Vikings.
Steelers twice?
Huh?
They got the Steelers twice?
Yeah, and then the Steelers again.
Yeah, and then KC.
Yeah. I mean, they might win two of those games.
Yeah, and the Browns.
Because you look, you got the Browns, KC, and the Steelers all have pretty good defenses this year.
Yeah. That's definitely a tough road for them. Man, what's that do for Jamar Chase, Like now how does he feel?
I mean, he's probably just like, well, we lost my man Burrow, so we'll just have to take a loss. Sucks is this last year with T. Higgins probably, and
Right. Well, T. Higgins is definitely out, right? He's gone after this year.
but didn't they already re-sign Chase?
Yeah, I guess he's not going anywhere, but I guess morale, does it hurt his morale? How does it affect him going forward?
Maybe this way the Bengals can start drafting offensive linemen for Burrow.
Yeah, it finally protect him. Well, I mean, they actually signed a couple, right? They spent some money in free agency.
Yeah,
Didn't help.
no.
It didn't do him any good. Browns beat the Steelers. That was kind of a toss-up game. Um, I think it's a good thing for the Browns to get rid of Watson, as far as not get rid of him, but him not starting. I don't think he's the future there.
Go down as one of the worst trade.
Oh, dude, and cost you $250 million. It's crazy. Bears played well.
Yeah.
I saw some stats on that where obviously they should have won that game, but uh, Lions fought back, so a lot to say with the Lions there after some early turnovers. Packers, Chargers, I guess that's more of a toss-up game. I really didn't think the Chargers would lose that game, which is where I think the Chargers, they have to look internally and say, what are we doing here? Because they have a good team. They have good players. You shouldn't be losing to the Packers.
I was reading something and it was so funny because it was like, it doesn't really matter who's the coach. Is it really the coach of the Chargers? Because if you go back, the last three coaches are all the same.
Right.
Brandon Staley, Anthony Lynn, and then what's his name? I always get him confused with McCoy.
Right. They, yeah, so maybe they need to change that up, right? Maybe they need a different type of coach to fire up the players or make them more excited to play or whatever. Um, what you can't be doing is making the decisions that that guy's made over the last couple of years.
Right.
And I don't know how, but you do have some of the best position players in different positions on offense and defense. So they're solid. So the Chargers a little bit Raiders played well against the Dolphins. So not a bad game for the Raiders. Tough loss, but I mean they still played
Yeah,
well.
their defense. It's so funny to me. It's for years now. I've been like, just give me a mediocre defense, just something.
Right.
And now they do have like a top 15 defense, and their offense sucks.
Right. Well, I mean, it's hard. You got Aiden O'Connell. You're starting a rookie quarterback. You're asking him to throw the ball 41 times a game, or at least that game. That's a lot of. It's a lot of. I mean, he threw the ball more times than Tua.
Right. Well, they were behind most of the game, but
Yeah.
also I think, and this was brought up and it was a really good point, was you can't take, they still have McDaniel's playbook, right? They're not scrapping that
Right.
because you can't scrap and put in a whole new offense. So there are going to be limitations because that offense sucks. So
Right. You got to like pick out the cream of the crop plays and try to
right.
do your best there. He spread the ball around well, though. But overall, I still think the Raiders played well. That's not bad, 13-20 against Miami, one of the highest scoring teams.
Right.
Giants come out, big win the Commanders. Cowboys defense just looks crazy. I get it, they're playing the Panthers, but it's not the only game that their defense is crushing it.
Both,
So
that was, we'll get into it later, but I played West again this last week, and Dallas defense had,
yeah, like 30 points
yeah, I
probably.
mean, and that was the first time I played them. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, their defense has probably scored more points than most of my players.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, they only got 23 that week. And yes, this last week on
I know. Well,
the,
when most defenses are pulling in like 6 or 7 points.
right. The last time I played them, oh no, they only had 16. That's
Yeah,
weird.
no, because he had him week one, and when they had that, like 40 points or something like that.
Oh yeah, they had 35.
Right.
Yeah, I know. It's like I'm like, oh, sweet. My defense, their touchdown and everything, 8 points. And I'm like, what?
Right.
I can't even get back to 10.
I'm happy usually when my defense stays at 10.
I know.
Titans, Jags dominate the game. Texans, tough game against Cardinals, win the game. 49ers, Bucks, Bills beat the Jets handily. Talk about Seahawks, Rams already, but the Seahawks, like, here's the thing, dude. You're 6-3. And I get it, you're going into LA, but that's still the Rams who are, four and but no, 3-6 at the time. And you're trying to keep pace with the 49ers. That's a must-win game for Seattle.
Well, and this is why I picked the Rams last week. And I said it was the Rams just have the Seahawks number. It's
Right.
been like that for like 5 years now. It's weird. The Rams always play the Seahawks tough.
I mean, they didn't particularly have a great statistical game.
Right. But I'm
Like
pretty sure the Rams beat them twice this year now, right?
yeah, the Seahawks didn't just didn't do much, you know. So, but regardless of who you're playing, I'm just saying situationally, like that's your chance, you know. You can't lose that game because now, well, you got the 49ers coming up or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, the Rams won 30-13 in Seattle
Yeah. Yeah.
for
That was early in the season, right?
yeah, it was the first game.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just disappointed in Seattle for them to lose that game. I think when you're competing to try to win a division against a team like San Francisco and there's a little bit of an opening for you to keep up, you shouldn't be going out and losing to the Rams.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, we've said it before though. Geno Smith, it was a nice story, but is he
right.
really?
Yeah. And when you look at his receivers, dude, he's got great receivers. How many quarterbacks would love that receiving core?
That's why I thought, and I love Witherspoon, but they should have traded up to get like Richardson and put him on the
Right.
bench.
Yeah. And put somebody right there ready to come in.
Yeah, you have Geno for a year or so, year or two, and then bring in Richardson.
Yep.
And then with Richardson, you could have, here you go. Let's do fourth down, or here's this goal line, bring him in.
Right.
And like the Bears did with Fields.
It's it's still hard, especially now watching Witherspoon play.
Oh, yeah, he's great. I
I
mean,
know that's a tough one because he's so good. Maybe you trade up your other pick instead of taking Jackson Smith and Jigba. But yeah, I mean Witherspoon looks like he's going to be a star for a long, long time, and that's hard to find that right in the secondary. Broncos Vikings, what a crazy game that was. Broncos win again. I mean, Broncos are now 5-5. And this is what, four in a row, right?
yeah,
And even the game they shouldn't have won even that game against the Bears. So they technically should have lost their first five or six,
well,
but they still have a tough schedule. Say Cleveland, Texans, Chargers, Lions, Chargers, Raiders.
right,
But
yeah,
they're not completely out of the hunt. Looking at the stats, I think with their win last night, they have like a 28 or 30% chance to make the playoffs
right.
still. Which kind of seems a little crazy considering where they were at, 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, we've had two, like their last two games have been insane, right?
Yeah. But it's the whole Tebow effect, right?
Right.
God must be a Broncos fan.
No, that's never say something like that.
But I mean, they're definitely hot, right? You can't argue a four
Right,
game winning streak. And then because the Vikings were on a winning streak themselves.
right.
The Vikings had won one, two, three, four, five in a row. So Vikings were pretty hot there.
Although, and then
But
looking, if you look at their schedule, Browns game is not easy. Texans is not easy. Chargers not easy. Lions not easy. Patriots easy.
oh
Chargers not easy.
no,
Raiders
they
not easy.
they got a tough schedule. So if they make the playoffs off that schedule, like there's a lot to be said for the way they
Yeah,
finished
then
the
they
season.
deserve it. I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah, they got
it probably won't happen. It's just
right. It's going to be interesting. So after this game, they have 3 straight road games against the Texans, Chargers, and Lions. That will determine it right there.
Yep. Well, I think Chargers is not as tough as, especially the Texans at home, and really the Lions at home. If you come out, yeah, if you come out with 3 wins there, that you definitely are, because now you're 8-5.
Right. And you got the Patriots and the Chargers at home,
Yeah.
which you're going to be talking Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve games in Denver. So how cold and how
Yeah,
horrible.
that's never fun to play. But I mean, if you look at overall right now, I mean, like Buffalo at 6-5, Pittsburgh 6-4, Cincinnati 5-5, Houston 6-4, Indy 5-5, then Denver 5-5. You've got KC, Jacksonville, Cleveland, Baltimore, Miami. So it's 5 teams, at least 2 spots. And those 2 spots, you're only 1 game back from all 3 of the teams that are ahead of you.
Right. And then if you get all messy, you can go down 14, the Jets. So you have the Raiders, Chargers, and Jets all have 6 losses. So
Yeah.
they're all right there too.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you want to go down to the next spot down, but you play Cleveland, you play Houston, so they play 2 of the teams that are right there with them too.
Right.
So I
And
mean,
then
it's just
they can knock the Chargers out, and the Raiders
yeah.
out.
Chargers at 4-6, Raiders 5-6. That hurts them. It's just interesting that, to me, that Denver's is still in the conversation at this point.
Right.
Like, because you could have easily written them off.
After the
Uh,
Dolphins game.
yeah. And then Monday night, what a game! Eagles Chiefs. Man, could have went either way. Did go either way, but the end of the game,
Yes.
Marcus Van Lay Scandling, or say his name.
We're
Valdez
not gonna
Scandling.
make not gonna make it, not gonna make a catch.
Dude.
That's his name.
Yeah, not gonna work here anymore. Dude, that was crazy because he was wide open. It wasn't like there was a hand in his face. Yeah, I get it. There's a little bit of rain, but that's a game-winning touchdown. But I mean, potentially, obviously, but still, you at least go up for 3. So that was huge.
And then wasn't it the next play though on 4th down, right?
Right.
The guy dropped it. It would have been a first down.
Yeah, a little harder play. It was 4th and long.
It was 4th and 26, but it was going to be a
Yeah.
first round if he would have caught it.
Right.
That's why I
To
like
me,
everyone. I can't stand him because he's a Chief, but dude, Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL.
oh, easily right now. I don't think there's any question about that. I think, there was guys like Josh Allen in the conversation, but I think it's just because you have to have someone to be in the conversation, because otherwise you can't just be like, you, then it's a really boring sports show if you're like, so let's talk about the best quarterbacks in the league. So that Patrick Mahomes, he's pretty good.
Right.
Like anybody else? No, no, just him. You think this other guy's good? Nah. Mm-mm. We're not talking about him. So you got to have some people.
You got no, but they're all going to be on those persons. But what about Dak?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess because I mean, Allen doesn't look great. I mean, Herbert obviously is not looking great. Joe Burrow hurt again. I mean, Hurts would be your next, which he does more than just quarterback. I think
Right.
Hurts makes his money the other ways, which is why he's an MVP candidate, right? Because he runs the ball, he scores a lot of touchdowns. He's
Well,
a
that
big
was a
dual
nice
threat.
throw he had to Devontae Smith, though.
Yeah. It's he can throw the ball, but he's not as consistent, obviously, as some of these other guys.
Well, that's a with Mahomes, he just the dude like can make a play out of anything.
Yeah. Well, and he doesn't need to have his feet planted the same way other guys do to
Right.
like just whip the ball 30 yards. You're like being tackled or like you're moving in a direction that you shouldn't be moving, but yet you're like, oh, there's somebody, and you just like sidearms it for 30 yards, you know. That's there's something real special about Mahomes, and
I
like you
know. It's
can't
gonna be
argue
my
it.
pain this week.
It's gonna be your pain for the next 10 years,
I know.
dude. But there really isn't. There is no other quarterback in the league that you can compare him to. But when you're talking about that next bunch, though, that two to five spot, there's a lot of controversy in there, especially the way Goff's playing. Yeah, he didn't have his greatest game against the Bears, but they still won. But he's been playing really well. Dak obviously has got the statistics lately. Um, you know, Purdy had a rough stretch, but he's still got the highest completion percentage in the league. Josh Allen, obviously a guy you're going to talk about in there. Burrow when he's healthy, and now Russell Wilson. Everybody's talking about how he's playing like old Russell Wilson.
Well, you can't forget Tua.
Well, yeah, and then yeah, obviously Tua. Tua is easy to forget because he's got such good receivers, but you still got to throw them the ball.
Right. He's a point guard.
Yep. Yeah, he's BJ Armstrong passing to Jordan.
Yep.
You're like he's an all-star. So yeah, a good week in football. A lot of games back and forth. But really some really good games this week. So let's get into our HSC podcast week 12 NFL predictions. Starting on Thanksgiving, 3 games on Thanksgiving. Can't wait. I know I'll be cooking a lot, but still gonna have the games up. And not horrible games. I think the night game obviously is the biggest game of the day, but let's start with Packers at the Lions. Of course, the Lions are playing. Uh, I think I'll start here. Obviously, I got the Lions because I always want the Packers to lose, but I think the Lions still have the better team. Packers, they're hit and miss. They come some weeks decent. Some weeks they've looked really horrible. But Detroit at home on Thanksgiving, coming off a tough game where they still won, and now they get to go home. Yeah, I think they easily win. I got Detroit by 14 here.
Yeah, I agree. I have Detroit by 14 also. They're healthy. David Montgomery's back, and man, he's looked with him in that lineup with Gibbs. That's just a lethal combination.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't believe
Yeah.
the Packers beat the Chargers, but
Right. I mean, but again, those teams are kind of even in the fact that the Chargers and Packers, you just don't know what team's going to show
right.
up. Um, but in this case, I think the Lions are going to show up. Commanders at Cowboys. Again, obviously Dallas has a huge point spread, but the Commanders aren't terrible. So what do you got here?
The Commanders, who we thought they were right after they traded Sweat
Yeah.
and um, Young, they are not very good. And the Cowboys will probably we're going to start the game this week off with 2 blowouts because I don't see how Sam Howell's going to be throwing picks. Bland might have another pick six. It's going to be ugly. I got Cowboys by 21.
Wow. Yeah, I think the Cowboys cover here. I mean, and it could be 21 for sure. Um, the Commanders. offense seems to play okay from time to time. I mean, obviously, Howell's leading the league in passing yards, so it's not like they're not doing anything. But you run into that Cowboys defense too that looks really good week over week. So I mean, I'm going to take him again by 17. I don't know if I'll go less than 21. I'll go 17. But yeah, I don't know, Cowboys, they're that team, you never know with them. Their defense is going to play well, but maybe Dak comes out and throws a bunch of interceptions.
Yeah.
Can't
You
trust
know.
Dak.
And then all the talking heads will have something to talk about.
Right. Right. You gotta have some cowboy conversation, right? I think one of the better games of the week here, the night game, because it's 49ers going to Seattle, right? So typically you would say, okay, 49ers should win this game. They're back healthy. Seattle hasn't looked particularly great in their last few games. Geno's playing, but he's still a little dinged up. But it's in Seattle. You don't want to go to play in Seattle. The weather, it's going to be cold. It's going to be real cold. It's a night game. It's supposed to get down into the low 30s. So overnight anyway. So they'll probably be playing in 38, 30, 40-degree weather. But I'm still taking the Niners. I don't know that they will blow them out. I'm going to just take them by a touchdown. I think and that's the spread. So maybe I'll take them by 8. I'll take them to cover by 8 instead of 7.
Yeah, we pretty much agree here. It's weird though, because I'm going against what I've done before, because usually it's the Rams beat the Seahawks beat the Niners, and the Niners beat the Rams. That's usually
Right.
how it goes. But the Niners are getting healthy. They kind of had their wake up call after losing those 3 in a row. They demolished the Jags. They beat up on the Bucks. The score was closer than the game really was. And like we said earlier, I don't trust Geno. So I'm taking the Niners by, I'll say 7.5. 7.
Just enough to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. So still a good game of you've got divisional games all day, right? So
Yeah.
divisional games are always fun because you do never know how you're going to play against teams in their division. I think the Seahawks game, 49ers is the scariest because you do have Seattle at home in fairly cold weather. So we'll see how the 49ers do there. But the other two games, I think pretty handled pretty easily by the teams. And the Black Friday game, it's on Prime too.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So it's a noon game on Prime. It's
West is
because
not going to be happy.
they lost their Thursday night game. Is that why? They're like, you know what? You got to give us Friday.
Probably.
But Dolphins at the Jets. What do you think?
The Tim Boyle era starts.
Uh,
Yeah. It's weird because the spread is 10, and that's hard because the Jets defense is so good.
right.
So I think the Dolphins will win, but they won't cover the spread. I think they win by 7. But I just don't know how the Jets are going to get any points.
I don't know either. But the Dolphins defense isn't great either.
Well,
They're
they're
not
top
terrible.
15.
Yeah, they
They're
say
like number 12.
they're not the greatest, not the worst. They're right there in the middle of the pack. Higher middle. But I mean, you got to go with the Dolphins. I actually don't have them covering either, just because Jets defense continues to play good every week. Although they kind of let Buffalo beat up on them a little bit last week. Uh, And poor dude, Zach Wilson, you gotta feel for this guy, right? Because he's just getting hammered in the media,
Right.
and he has been for so long. But now it's like he broke down crying when he was announced not the starting quarterback. It's like just let the dude be. Like he just lost his starting job, and now all you
Right.
want to do is throw out all over media that he was crying. He broke down crying over it.
Well,
Come
and
on,
I mean, is he the greatest quarterback? No, but their offensive line is horrendous.
right?
So I can't really blame him. I mean, you saw that throw where he almost against the Raiders, that Hail Mary.
Well, yeah, we talked. I mean, we talked about it. He's got a cannon for an arm. Nothing wrong with his arm strength. Maybe he just needs to get out of New York. Maybe he just needs a fresh start. Go to a smaller market. Keep his head down. Learn a little bit more about reading progressions and not rely totally on his athleticism and learn how to better play the position of quarterback.
Right.
So that might be what he needs. But at this point, he's just getting hammered. So I feel bad for him. But without, I mean, they don't have a quarterback either way. So I don't know how the Jets can win any more games.
Nope.
They probably play the Patriots again, so they might have that chance.
I just feel bad because this could be one of the historically greatest defenses of all time, and it's like
Right.
lost.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like no chance because their offense is so bad. What do you think about the coach? What do you think about Saleh?
And I mean, obviously, got the defenses where it's at.
Wasn't he a defensive coordinator before? I thought
Yeah, he was the Niners.
yeah. Yeah, he came from the Niners. That's right.
Yeah, I think he's good. I'd like to have seen what Rodgers would have done.
Right. Yeah. Would have been how different would the season be
Right.
with Rodgers playing quarterback? But as you said before, though, how good can Rodgers really do with that line?
Right. At least he's mobile and he's smart.
Right. He's sneaky mobile too. Like he's shifty in the pocket. He doesn't have to necessarily always be on the run to slip tackles and still throw the ball.
Well, the difference too is experience. He could go to the line and call out coverages and call out blitzes and help that
Yeah.
offensive line. And so,
Yeah, I guess it's a little unfortunate for the Jets. But yeah, I don't know that they can beat the Dolphins in that game either. So let's see. Saints at Falcons. I mean, I'm taking the Saints here, but every time this division is just wild. Like the Saints are winning the division at 5-5, which I thought they would be better, but they're still winning the division. But then sometimes the Falcons play well at home, and sometimes the Saints, you just don't know who's even playing. But so I naturally want to take the Saints because I think they should win this game, but it's at home for the Falcons, so this is a tough one. I mean, ultimately, I'm going to land on the Saints. I'm going to take the Saints by 2 field goals, 6.
yep, I'm going to reiterate what I've said the last few weeks. You have Bijan Robinson, you have Kyle Pitts, and you have Drake London, and you don't use them.
Right.
Arthur Smith is the worst coach in the NFL right now.
I mean, you almost have to. It's hard to disagree with that because you do. I mean, like we talked about before, there's a two top 10 picks or three top
Three.
10 picks,
Three top 10 picks.
three top 10 picks, right? Or at least that you use top 10 picks on. Uh, I don't know that Drake London qualifies as a top 10 pick. He's not bad. I mean, he's a good player, but a little bit of stretch. But yeah, if you're gonna draft him, use him. If you have him, use him.
You drafted a tight end and a running back at 5, right? Or no, I guess 8 for Bijan,
Eight,
right?
eight, 8-4 or
5, 8,
8-5.
and 8.
Yeah, 5, 8, and 8. Yeah, 2 8s.
Jeez.
Well,
Uh
and you got three top 10 picks, right? Like, what are you doing here?
yeah, it was ridiculous. The Falcons don't know what they are. Is Ritter playing? Is Heineke playing? Who knows?
Right.
Saints are coming off a bye. Carr will be back. Yeah, I have the Saints winning because they don't ever make anything easy. So I got the Saints winning by 3.
Yeah, the Saints like to live on the edge. These guys. Steelers Bengals, which looked like it was going to be a good game, but now I don't know so much. What do you got here? Steelers at Cincinnati.
It's interesting. The Steelers are only favored by 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
The Cody
Because
Pickett.
the reality is you're still starting Pickett, right?
Yeah. And it is. It's still the thing is the Steelers have been outgained in every game this year still.
Right.
They're fired their OC. So usually when that happens, you have a shot in arm game. Yeah, I'm taking the Steelers, and they're actually going to win by 7.
Yeah. Are they going to outgain the Bengals though? That's the
I
question.
think so. And I think this time they will outgain the Bengals.
Yeah, I think the tough part here is like you said before, when you get rid of your offensive guru, you don't necessarily you can't change the playbook, right?
Right.
You have to stay with Canada's playbook. All you're changing up is who's calling those plays,
Right.
which can be a benefit, right? You can still call the right plays, but the problem I have here for the Bengals is you don't know what you have at quarterback, and you can't rely on that to win the game for you against a really good Steelers defense. So unless Browning somehow comes out and plays amazing, I don't see how Cincinnati can win this game. So I still got Pittsburgh in a close game. They'll cover, but it'll be close. It's going to come down to maybe 3. Panthers Titans game of the week here. I don't even know why they play. It's like the Bears playing the Panthers. But I just you can't take the Panthers in any game. Uh, I think the positive for Tennessee this season is they're finally able to dump Tannehill, and Levis does look like he can be a quarterback of the future for them. So that's a positive thing for the Titans. No matter which direction they win out, lose out, however they play, they win this game because it's the Panthers, and they cover. They win by a touchdown.
This is the could be the screw Steve over game. The Panthers are like, ah ha ha, we're gonna beat the Titans.
Take away my number one pick.
Yeah, but I don't think it's happening. Titans are at home. Derrick Henry is pissed. He's talking
Right.
about hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
Um, he's getting like 12. It's kind of ridiculous. So I think this is a get right game for the Titans. And the Panthers are not very good. And Reich is like, I'm still going to call plays. So I got the Titans by covering. I have them winning by 6.
Because I mean, if this is the game that you want to get Henry going again, the Panthers is the team you want to do that against.
Right.
Yeah, you want to give him 20, 25 carries.
Well, it'll only make Levis better if you do that.
Right. Yeah, because then it opens it up. You get, 7, 8 guys in the box. It makes it a lot easier to read the defense. The throws are a lot easier.
Yeah, Derrick Henry had 10 carries last week.
So dumb.
10.
I mean, I know there's good running backs in the NFL, but you always still have to think it's Derrick Henry as one of the best. And you're giving him 10 carries.
Yeah. And then the week before, he had 11.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, come on.
Yeah. And he's a bruiser. Bucks at the Colts. Um, Boy, Indianapolis is just Jekyll and Hyde this year, but they're at home. And the Bucks, yeah, I get it. They played the 49ers, and that's a tough game. On the road, I'm just not super confident in the Bucks here. I think the Colts win, not in a blowout, but it's probably going to come down to field goals. The Bucks are going to get two extra field goals and win by, or no, the Colts are going to get two extra field goals, win by 6.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me because it was a pick 'em. So when I pick 'em, I go with the home team. I'm taking the Colts by a field goal.
Yeah, and that basically gets them to cover as well.
Yeah.
Another game of the week here. What do you got? Patriots at the Giants.
This actually was a very tough one because in years past, you're like, oh, the Patriots are coming off a bye, right?
Yeah.
Or were they? I think they were coming off a bye. Let me double check my. I don't remember them stinking it up last week. Yeah, they were on
Yeah.
a bye.
Yep. They're coming off a bye.
So I'm like, ooh, the Bill Belichick's gonna have Danny DeVito's number here.
You might.
But I just, and that's why they're favored by 3.5 on the road. But I'm gonna take the Giants. I just think the Patriots are mailing it in now.
Yeah. How are you fit? You're 2-8. You're on the road, and you're a 3-point favorite, a 2.5 point favorite.
Danny DeVito effect.
I mean, yeah, but who the Patriots got? Like we talked about this many times.
I think it's
Uh,
because they're coming off a bye, so they've had more time to prepare, and that's where
right.
Belichick thrives.
And the Giants are just terrible this year.
They're number 31 and 32 in points per game.
But it should be a high scoring affair. This could be 5-3.
Yeah, win on a
Uh,
safety.
well, I'm going 5-3 Giants. So I actually think I think Saquon has a good game, and so I think that will put he'll be the only one on the field that's actually a solid player. In the between both teams on offense, you're going to see one good player, and that's Saquon Barkley.
If
So I'm
Wes
going to
was
take the
here, he'd say
Giants.
Mac Jones is going to throw for 300 yards and have 4 touchdowns.
Right, because we know he loves Mac Jones. Oh, Mac Jones, dude. Is he even starting?
No, I don't know.
I don't think he is,
They
right?
haven't released who's going to start yet.
Right. They're in their locker room like Sunday, and they're like flipping a coin. They go, "What do you got? What do you got? All right, let's see who's starting."
Right.
Jeez.
Yeah, because you got Zappy, you got Malik Cunningham or
Yeah.
Jones.
Or
Sadly,
Jones.
Jones is the best option of those three.
And unfortunately it is. I think I think they ruined it by taking Zappy out last year when Jones got hurt and Zappy was on the run. The team was on the run, but Zappy was leading the team. You should have just left him in,
All right.
and because you would have kept building his confidence and you would have seen what he was back then. And I get it, Mac Jones was your guy, but still, like he had won a lot in a row. There wasn't a huge difference between Zappy and Jones at that point, as far as what you thought they could do physically. And I thought that was a killer for Zappy's overall confidence. I think it would have been a good time to leave him in.
Well, it's funny, the same thing happened years and years ago for the Patriots. Drew Bledsoe got hurt. Tom Brady comes in. They didn't take Brady out.
Right. Yeah. Zappy could have been the next Brady. You guys just lost out on 7 Super Bowls. Probably not. But I do think that it hurt that that it hurt Zappy. That's why Zappy isn't better than he is right now. So let's see. Jags at Texans. This should be a good game. Man. Yeah, I went back and forth with this one. And I think we might have a swing game here because I'm gonna go with the Texans. I think at home, the Jags are good, but I just think the Texans, they're gonna come in at home. CJ Stroud's gonna throw the ball really well, but I'll tell you what they're gonna do. They're gonna run the ball really well in this game. And the Texans are gonna play decent defense, good enough to win. So I'm gonna take the Texans by a touchdown.
I also have the Texans winning.
Oh man, come on.
This is one of those games where, the Jaguars, you're thinking, oh man, they're going to take this division. And then they always let people creep back in. And I think the Texans, D'Amico Ryans is a great coach, I believe. And CJ Stroud, MVP, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, the
This is the game
MVP.
to show it. So, yeah, I got the Texans winning by 3.
I mean, let's say the Texans win this game. Let's just talk about that for a second. The Texans now 7-4 if they win this game. You're telling me 6 months ago, 3 months ago, any time period ago, you would have had the Texans at 7-4 at Thanksgiving,
And they'd be number one. They'd be leading their conference, their division.
right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, both of those things together. Well, I believe 7-4 would be winning the division. I just wouldn't believe the Texans would be the one with the record.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. Remember, I've been high on Ryans for a few years now. And the Texans, if you watched their games last year, they were in them.
Right.
They were what you would call scrappy. They're kind of
Right.
like the Cardinals this year. The Cardinals, we don't expect them to win many games before Kyler Murray came back, but they were always scrappy in all those games.
Right. They had a horrible record, but you didn't necessarily want to play them.
Right. And so you get a franchise quarterback in there, you get a transcendent pass rusher, you bring in the head coach. So I could kind of see it, but I think it was fast. I thought more of the lines of like the Lions, where they would be like a 500 team.
Or they'd start slow, come on
Yeah.
strong at the end, and then build for next season.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I picture them. I picture them losing, maybe going like 2-5 or something, right? And then finishing maybe, 500 or just below, maybe like
Right.
uh, uh
9-8
eight,
or 8-9.
nine, 8-9 or something like that. Yeah, yeah. Or maybe even a 7-10, but really had built maybe they won, 5 of the last 7 or something like that.
Right.
So just like I said, if they win this game and they go 7-4, which I think they have a really good chance to do it. I'm not completely sold on the Jags. I think the Jags play good enough to win usually, but I think the Texans at home will play well. I think their offense on both sides, both facets, like they're running the ball and they want to run the ball now, which really helps CJ Stroud, right? Because if you force them to stop the run with the receivers he's got and the way he's throwing the ball, that makes it's better to have CJ go, 19 for 25 or 20 for 26 for 300 yards than 40 pass attempts for 400 yards, because that means you ran the ball for 100, 150. So I think it's great for the Texans. I'd love to see him win this game. Um, it's great to see a guy like D'Amico Ryans come in and have the success he's had already. More will just make it better. Browns at Broncos, which this becomes a more interesting game too, with Denver actually favored. What do you think?
It's that Browns defense is just too good. I'm taking the Browns on the road to win by 3. They just do enough to win.
Right. Yeah. I think it's the end of the win streak for Denver as well. Unfortunately, it's the same thing. I think the Browns defense is just too good.
Yep.
I don't know that they'll score a lot of points, but it'll be a close game. Browns obviously being the underdog don't need to cover, but I think they win the game. Oh, Rams at Cardinals. I mean, you got to pick the Rams here, I think. Even though it's at Arizona, the Rams have too much. They have more talent on their team, at least on the offensive side. And I think Stafford's playing again, so he's fine. Nakua looks like he's back, full healthy. He had a good game last week. So, I mean, Cup's still questionable. He may not even play, but I don't even know if you need Cup anymore. So, I'm still going to take the Rams here by a touchdown.
It is time for our first swing game.
You're riding the Cardinals again,
Well,
huh?
this one makes more sense. Last week it was because of the Texans and you thought they might win on the road, but the Cardinals are a whole different story at home.
Right, right.
Rams are favored by 1. That's not much confidence. Kyler Murray is playing his 3rd game. Connor is back. Yeah, I just think that the Cards are going to win a few games at the end of the year. So I got the Cards here by 6.
Nice. I need this game. I got to start gaining back some ground. We're getting short on weeks here. Uh, so don't let me down, Rams. That's good. That's a good swing game there. And that game can really go either way. That's a tough one. Chiefs and Raiders. At the Raiders. It's at Las Vegas, but Chiefs they're favored by a lot. What do you think?
It's kind of disrespectful. Like last week, the Dolphins are favored by like 14. This week, the Chiefs are favored by almost 10 away. I mean, I have the Chiefs winning, but I don't think they're going to win by 10. I have the Chiefs winning by a field goal late. Um, but I just can't see them blowing them out.
Yeah, it's a tough one because the Raiders are playing much better football than they've played all year. Um, although here's the problem. Patrick Mahomes is angry from this last game. And he's a little bit angry at his receivers for dropping balls everywhere. And I think he's going to take it out on the Raiders. Not a huge blowout, but I do think they cover. I at the Chiefs by 10. It's a tough game for the Raiders. Because look, you got Miami and Kansas City back to back. That's never easy.
All right.
So
But you got
that's
your
gonna be tough.
Thanksgiving home cooking. You're at home.
That's right. Yeah, but they're in Vegas. They're going to buffet Thanksgiving.
You
They're like,
don't have
hey,
to worry about cooking.
let's go get that buffet Thanksgiving. Uh, that's tough for the Raiders too, because you go from 5-5 to 5-7 just because you're playing two of the better teams in the AFC. But we'll see. Maybe they win it. You never know.
You never know.
Never know, dude. When you got that new head coach thing, you got that little bit of extra momentum. Bills at Eagles.
Well, I
Wow.
was going to say one thing. So let's say the Raiders beat the Chiefs. Do you say Antonio Pierce, you're the head coach next year?
I already do. But yeah, like if he finishes even one game below 500 or even two games, like, yeah, I mean, I take him regardless. But if he comes in at 7-10 or better, yeah, absolutely. I don't see any reason no, especially if beats the Chiefs. If they win that game, go 6-6 at this point, like you have to do it. But at the end of the day, I've never thought teams had any luck with getting rid of a interim coach who performed well.
Right.
Every time I've seen interim coaches do well and then they replace him, it usually doesn't turn out well.
Yep.
Yeah, so you got to stay with the interim coach, especially if it's because he's already proven it's not going to be a total fallout. It's not a
Right.
loss. So I don't see why you wouldn't. And the Raiders need that. They need his type of attitude. They need his type of coaching style. They need his coaching style, especially after having Josh McDaniels for that long.
Right. And they just need to bring in a good OC.
Right. Yeah, they really need to focus on his assistants. Right, putting good staff, make sure they have the best staff around him. Yeah, absolutely. Bills at Eagles should have been one of the best games of the year, and still may be. But you got the 6-5 Bills, like really? So another one of those teams, like I just didn't imagine it 6-5 at this time. But what do you got here? Bills at Eagles.
Well, we fire your OC because you can't get your special teams on the field. Your your defense is not what it's been in years past because of injuries. You're yeah. I gotta go Eagles here. They're healthy. I mean, that defensive line of the Eagles is insane.
It is. It's crazy. I mean, most of their defense. Now they added Byard. I mean, it's stupid.
Yeah. So I gotta take the Eagles by 7 here.
Well, definitely getting their second swing game here.
Whoa.
So here's my thought process here. I think most of the time, I think I would have taken the Eagles here, given everything we just talked about. But this is a must-win game for the Bills. If you go 6-6 here, you're really taking the chance of not making the playoffs. Right? It puts you in a position where you could not be a playoff team. And I don't think the Bills can afford, as the coaching staff, as players, they can't afford that confidence hit, right? You can't afford to lose this game. So as much as I think the Eagles are probably a better team right now, I think the Bills come out with this live or die type attitude. So I'm going to take the Bills in this one. Since they're the underdog, they obviously don't need to cover. But this is a big game for the Bills, so that's what I'm riding on. May not work out, but I'm going with that.
The Bills, after this game, have a bye, and then they play the Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers, Patriots, and Dolphins.
Right. So you have to win this game. And then you got to come out and you got to beat. Because you probably win the New England, you probably win the Chargers game. So then you got to then beat Kansas City, Dallas, and Miami. At least if you win the Philly game, that puts you at 7 wins, 10 wins, or 9 wins from, yeah. So you got to beat at least one of those to get 10 wins. Because 10 wins probably put you in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a big game for them. They really have to win this game because then if you don't win this game, that means you got to win 2 out of 3 against KC, Dallas, and Miami to then have a chance. So I don't know. That's what I'm going with. Yeah, I'm either gonna lose some ground or gain some ground. That's the way it goes. All right, Ravens, the Chargers. I don't know that this is the best uh, Sunday night game, but Ravens did lose Mark Andrews. That's a big hit for them. I don't think the Chargers can beat the Ravens. I think both sides of the ball, the Ravens are better. I think the Chargers defense isn't playing as well as it should, and their offense is hit and miss. So I'm gonna go with the Ravens to cover, more than cover because it's only a 3 or 4 points. So I'm gonna go with the Ravens by 9.
Yeah, I agree with you here. Bosa's out for the year, or at least he's put on injured reserve. Yeah, so Mac's going to get doubled. Staley's a horrible coach. Not much else to say.
Right.
Ravens by 10.
Yeah, right there. So Monday Night Football, last game of the week. Get to watch the Bears again. Man,
Oh my gosh.
so many Bears games this year because they were supposed to be a lot better than they are. But what do you got here? You got Monday Night Football, Bears at Vikings.
Here's what's going to happen, and it's a great formula. The Cardinals have used it, the Bears have already used it. Bears are going to go up by about 10 points. And then the Vikings are going to come back and win. Because the Bears are going to be like, okay, well, hold your horses, you guys.
Yeah.
Stop.
Wait. We're getting a little too high on the draft board here.
Yeah, okay. Let's just start calling screenplays.
Right.
Yeah, so I got the Vikings. Got the Vikings by. It's going to be close. I'll have them by 4. They'll cover, but it's going to be close.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Bears they should tank, right? They should lose this game. But I think they want to beat the Vikings in this game because nobody likes the Vikings. And, if you beat the Vikings here, you really hurt their playoff chances where the Lions, it didn't matter too much. The Lions are probably going to win the division anyway. So, that's an okay game to tank at the end. So I'm going to take another swing game here. Look at this. I can gain 3 games this week
Wow.
because I'm taking the Bears in here. And I'm taking Justin Fields to have a big game. I think because he rushed for over 100 last game, but I think now he's going to throw for 250 and rush for over 100 in this one.
Dang.
So third swing game, Bears winning Monday night. Let's do it. All right. Well, that wraps up week's picks. A lot of good games. Should be an interesting week. I think as you get closer to the playoffs here, you're into this week 12. A lot of things change, week over week with different wins and losses and how people start jockeying for position. And it really comes down to your schedule, right? How's your schedule
Yeah.
finish out? Who gets to play the sub 500 teams to finish versus who's playing the division contenders. That's what hurts you the most in these scenarios. And I think Buffalo is one of those teams that is in trouble.
Yeah.
When you look at their schedule. So because it'd be crazy if Buffalo didn't make the playoffs.
Imagine the Buffalo and the Bengals at the beginning of the year going, those 2 teams won't make the playoffs.
Yeah, or they're like we're playing in the AFC Championship.
All right.
Like that's what they thought, right?
Yep.
But yeah, and you're telling them, sorry, you're not making the playoffs. Little fantasy football recap. Talk about HSC Podcast fantasy football. I think we both got wins. We both needed wins. Yeah, so you got the win as well. It puts you back up there, but man, like it's really tough right now. You're up to 5-6, right?
If I win
But
out, I think I can make it.
well, you still got 3 teams at 6-5, one team at 7-4, and then a 9-3 or 8-3 and 9-2. Like I'm worried about even if I win out, not making
Well, I don't think you're going to win out, Steve. I was looking at the
it.
schedule. Yours is kind of brutal. You've got
Yeah,
Tom, Mike, and then Big Mike.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's not the easiest schedule, but I'm not too, I mean, my team can score points, right? They just need to stay healthy.
Right.
That's been my problem all year is injuries. So if and then losing Andrews hurt, right? But Schultz has been playing really well, so I have a good backup. But everybody just keeps getting hurt, dude. So that's the problem.
Well, I'm
Uh,
up with you, and if I can, because right now, it poor Josh.
oh, dude, Josh is getting it. The worst, dude.
He's the leading scorer, but
Yeah,
he's
he's now the leading scorer. Yeah,
4-7.
well, because
Then
he's got
there's
second most points against him.
yeah, and then there's me, you, Mike, not Big Mike, but Mike Knight,
Yeah,
all within a point of each other as the next. And then yeah, so it's kind of like if we keep scoring, I'm just worried. I'm looking at you have to play Mike Knight, Team Knight. He kind of has it easy. If he beats you, he's in because he has
right.
Cortland has you, Josh, and the Godfather. So that might
Yeah,
be
that's a tough. That's tough. But look at, I mean, how is Team John 8-3 when he's only scored 1188 and but he only has 1186 against him, so he still has a 2 point margin between win points
well.
for and
Just
points against.
last week he beat Raul by 1 point.
It's crazy. Even Big Mike's team, dude, he's only scored 1291, but he's only had 1069 against him.
Yeah, that's what's been insane. Every time you go against him,
You
you
don't
don't
score any
score,
points,
and then
and he's playing six players and beating
yeah.
you.
But those six players are scoring 130 points.
Right. That's nuts, dude. It's going to be a scramble here at the end, though, because when you look at it, you've got uh you're at 5-6, right? And that's right now in seventh place. And to get into fourth, you've got 3 6 and 5s. You've got a 7-4, an 8-3, and a 9-2. So this with Wes at 6-5, me at 6-5, Mike Knight at 6-5. That's going to be a scramble here coming down to the end.
Right. That's where I'm like, if you guys each lose one, or two of the three lose one,
Yeah.
well, I got need all of you to lose one actually, but
Yeah, you gotta because there's only 3 games left, right? So even if you win all three, you're 8-6.
well, Wes has got Big Mike, Team Awesome, and Josh, so he probably lose one of those three.
Right. But then he's
Your
yeah,
Team
eight
Knight is going
six.
to lose a game. One of you is going to lose to each other.
Right.
So that puts me only needing, and then Order in the Courtland could easily lose 2 games.
But then it'll come down to a tie break for points for. So then it depends on how much you score.
Yep. And easily Team John can lose all three of his last 3 games.
Right. I think Big Mike's in no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, because there's only two. Yeah, there's already. Well, I mean, he could lose on a tie break if a couple teams win out. He loses all three.
Right. I don't think we're going to see
Ugh,
a bunch of 9-5 teams, though.
no, no. So this is going to be interesting. So interesting finish out to the HSC playoffs. We're going to have a little college football thing happening here. It's going to be a lot of scenarios coming into the last couple of weeks with how close all these records are, and looking at the final schedules.
Yeah, I like this. I got a 14% chance to make the playoff.
14%. So you're saying there's a chance.
They're not giving you, they're only giving you 38, Steve.
I know. I know, dude. I dropped. Well, I mean, when you lose that many games, dude, I just got devastated by injury, lost 4 in a row. That was rough. It was a rough, rough time in my fantasy football life. But at least I'm still close, right? I still have a chance, right? I still have 38%. So we'll see.
You're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. As long as my guys can stay healthy, I got a chance. All right, well, let's wrap it up here. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and like. Appreciate all the likes. Thanks for sticking it out here till the end. Listening on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor. Appreciate the listens. Don't forget to follow on those platforms as well. More and more listeners all the time. So if you guys want to hear anything or hear us talk about anything, don't forget comments and likes and stuff, and we'll talk about any of those topics. But I appreciate everybody listening. Any final thoughts for this weekend's games?
Hey, I'm not the games, but I want people to put their comments. What is your favorite Thanksgiving side?
Oh yeah. Let's hear some comments. It's a little late in the podcast, so maybe people will still be listening. We should have done that at the beginning.
Yeah.
We missed that one. But if you are still listening, or maybe you forwarded all the way through the video to the end, I'll put it. Actually, I'll put it in the description as well. What's the favorite Thanksgiving side? What's yours? What's yours?
I got a broccoli casserole, I would say I go for.
Broccoli casserole. Mine's just a good old dinner roll.
No.
I mean, you can't go wrong with a nice warm buttered dinner roll, you know?
Yeah. I also like the mashed potatoes with gravy too. Can't go wrong.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that is tough to beat because you really can't have Thanksgiving without mashed potatoes and gravy.
No.
I
I
mean, you can
mean,
literally just have turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy and just be good.
I'd be good with just the sides. I don't even need the turkey.
Right. Turkey's for later. It's for sandwiches and
Yep.
soup and all the other stuff.
Yeah, give me a nice turkey sandwich with a cheddar cheese and cranberry sauce on it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things you can do with turkey sandwiches. It's crazy. I did the grilled cheese turkey sandwich with brie cheese though,
Oh,
and cranberry sauce. You put cranberry sauce, brie, and turkey, then you make it a grilled cheese.
nice.
I was like, dude, like whoever thinks of this stuff is like off the chart. They got some next level thinking when it comes to their food.
It's almost like, what do I got in my fridge? What can I make out of
Yeah,
this?
let's throw it in together. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.